I'm Dwayne the Jock Ronson, the person who invented Vimeo while trying to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand. I think the concept of death is just interesting. It's looking particularly intriguing because I am on not the first take of a video about Cole and Sav's book. If you don't know who Cole and Sav are, they're a family vlogger that's moderately more into God than the rest. In their videos, in this book, and on Cole's Twitter, it's pretty fucking apparent. You might know Cole from his tweet about bragging about having just lost his virginity. You also might know his Twitter for having been deleted after he said that he would wait until a 4-year-old was above the age of consent. Take of that what you will. They're not really the kinds of YouTubers that I would expect to make a book. Not because I don't think that they can read, although I don't. Like, their target audience is 7-year-olds, and this book is 231 pages long. It's also about, like, family stuff and God, which makes it perfect light reading for any 7-year-old. In fact, when I went to pick it up from the library, they wouldn't even give it to me because I'm not a Wookum, which stands for White Christian Mom. The side of the book even has a religion sticker. At the very least with Jake Paul's book, like, the book is targeted at his audience. It's very bad because it's written by Jake Paul, but the book is at the reading level of and targeted at the people who watch his videos, who read books, I guess. In contrast, this book is probably a fucking money laundering scheme. One of the best ways to figure out how terrible a book is by reading the back of it, so I'm gonna do that. Millions around the world have followed the fairy tale love story of viral YouTube stars Cole and Savannah LeBrant. I'm going to say that because it's probably correct and also probably incorrect in the sense that they don't use it that way. And watched as they said, I do. I did not need to do air quotes there. But now, for the first time ever, Cole and Sav invite you beyond the highlight reel, which implies that it's not scripted, and into the beautiful and messy, funny and tender story of how God brought two unlikely people together in a surprising, unexpected way. No. Just no. Every word of that last sentence was blatantly incorrect. Two unlikely people is the worst way to describe these two. They honestly look like you take one of them and use the Snapchat gender swap feature on them and then have them be a couple. They also look and act like girl defined. That's probably because they're just blonde, but I'm not racist, I'm just telling it like it is. The first chapter is called Surprise at the Grove. The book begins with Cole explaining how people use minutes as a measurement of distance when people drive in cars, which is a thing that people have done since the dawn of time. Back when the wheel was first invented, people were using minutes to describe how people went around in their cars. Because as we learned from the Flintstones, people have had cars for 10,000 years. So this book also mentions that Cole was on The Amazing Race with his mom and got second place. Like a fucking casual. He also talks about how he went to LA to like get an acting gig, but he really hated acting, which is super ironic considering that his entire channel is dedicated to lying to children, which I'm pretty sure counts as acting. So we learn what the Grove is. Apparently it's a mall in LA. I knew that. Before he went out to California, Cole and his friend DM'd Savannah on Musical.ly, which ended up becoming TikTok, which if it sounds creepy, that's because it is creepy. He immediately assumes that she's married because she has a kid, which is some good old internalized misogyny. Which, like, why would a woman want to have a child if there wasn't a man in her life? Savannah's sister approaches them and gets Cole to, like, come up and small talk with them. So Cole explains what VidCon is, because again, this was made for the Wookum crowd. And by pure chance, Cole happened to be in California for unrelated reasons, like a week before VidCon. He was a popular Viner at this point, so I legitimately do not know why he was there and hadn't thought about this. However, he decides that he's going to go to VidCon now that it's an opportunity for him to not get laid because Jesus is watching. Overall, the coincidences that allow this relationship to happen are probably a bit overkill, and it makes me really doubt how truthful this is. And it makes it significantly more easy, because based on all these coincidences, for people to assume that God had a hand in it, or that it's just a lie. I should not have worn this. August. What am I doing? Chapter 2 is written from Savannah's perspective, and she mentions that her sister just so happened to be in town that way. Okay, writing tip to Cole and Sav. even if this book is true, which I seriously doubt, like, if you're trying to make people think it is, you still need to follow, like, narrative advice. It's a book. You're supposed to, do that. Even if it's true, even if all these things are true, if you want people to believe that it's true, don't say things like this. It just makes it seem more miraculous, which I know is something that you think would be great because you believe miracles actually exist. In the sense of this, it seems like what this thing that writers call plot convenience, and it makes your book seem significantly less plausible, which if you're trying to make people think that your life is so great and God is involved in everything, maybe don't make it seem like you're lying. She also claims to recognize Cole because he DM'd her, but she also claims that she DM'd back despite that Cole does not reciprocate this fact in his chapter. She explains how she got social media famous by posting pictures of her baby. Who gives a shit? At the end of both chapters 1 and 2, they discuss how God had to have had a hand in this because it's completely implausible. Which, by the way, addressing your own implausibilities in your story does not make your implausibilities better. Anyway, it's mostly just so that they can justify this religion sticker. After she gets home, she stalks Cole online, which is a totally normal thing that everyone should be doing with people they just met, and then praises how funny Cole is, which is not true. She explains how cool it is that he was on Amazing Race with his mom because a good Christian honors thy mother and father. Fuck, where's the page? Where is it? Fuck. I didn't put these things on. He didn't seem like any other guy I'd met. Yeah, that's because he's fucking weird. She attributes her meeting him to her prayers, which is, okay, whatever, I don't really give a shit. The title of this chapter is But He's So Young, which is really interesting because it's never brought up in this chapter. She acknowledges that he's 4 years younger than her, but doesn't acknowledge that that's weird because he's 19. Chapter 3. So this chapter begins with Savannah shit-talking 50% of the entire population because they are not Cole, and talks about how faithful of a person Cole is. No fucking shit. He's 19. He believes that you can't have sex unless you have a piece of paper from the government that lets you pay taxes together. And he also incredibly socially awkward. You expect he's gonna be fucking, like, smooth, like, flirt. What's the thing called where it's like the thing that incels use because they're trying to get laid? She unironically uses the term SoCal. I started high school and didn't know that. I'm not gonna say that. I started high school and I didn't know anyone. Then I met a guy who seemed to be terrific. Good use of foreshadowing. We even met at church. We dated all through high school and I thought we had a future together until I found out he was cheating on me. I really loved him and had given him the one thing I could never get back. My virginity. I cannot not laugh when I... Wait. Yeah. I cannot not laugh whenever I read that. Because it's dumb. Then she starts talking about her daddy issues and how she feels cheated, that her dad cheated on her mom, and feels like that he isn't a true Christian because in the Bible it says that you're not supposed to cheat on your wife. But also the Bible says you can't do anything. If she breathes, she's a thought. Also, religion doesn't necessarily put any more higher level of shittiness on being a shitty person. Murder is still bad, regardless of if you believe that a 4,000-year-old book is telling you murder is bad. Which I guess I do believe that the Bible is telling me murder is bad, I just don't give a shit about what the Bible is telling me. She goes on a tirade about how terrible it is to lose your faith, which is something that she didn't do. After my Christian boyfriend cheated on me, I started to give up on guys. And God. So she starts to question all this shit because 2 Christian men hurt her. Here's the thing. You can make any Venn diagram of 2 people that hurt you and then just give up on that one overlap of those 2 people. But instead of coming to the conclusion that the shitty things about this comes from the fact that her church perpetuates boys will be boys culture, which is just an assumption, but it's also definitely correct, she decides that what she needs to do instead is get back to God, which is the exact opposite of what she should be doing. After she ends up pregnant, her boyfriend Tommy, who I really hope isn't his real name because she talks significant shit about him in this book, leaves her. On a side note, from accounts of people that aren't trying to demonize him because premarital sex reasons, he seems like a pretty nice guy, The book paints him like an asshole, but from things that I found on the internet, he really isn't. I actually almost was gonna act like he was an asshole for the entire rest of the script until much later on in the video, once I was near the end of the book, I found out that in this book, Cole specifically made them demonize him because he wanted to seem a lot better, which is something that's really great from a guy as creepy as he is. We'll get to that later. Her being pregnant allows her to manipulate her parents into getting back together, which lasts for about 4 seconds, and then her and Tommy have frequent flings for who knows how long. She starts praying for a good Christian man to come up and marry her, which leads into her meeting Cole. My main question in this chapter is like, how much of a cult was the church that she grew up in? Like, did she really have that much remorse for that? I mean, obviously, I guess she would have had to because of how, like, obviously teen pregnancy is not great. Do you think that she had that much remorse, like, at the time? Or do you think that she retroactively decided that she fucked up after she met Cole and Cole was, like, seemed super nice and he was sort of manipulating her even if he didn't realize it? It was at this point that it began to bug me how fucking short the chapters are. I summarized each of those things in, I actually don't know how long the video is going to be, when I was sitting here and also reading back at the script to try to remember what the thing was and frequently fucking up my lines. I assume that the reason they did this is because they want to have each chapter be from either Cole's perspective or Savannah's perspective, which is dumb because later on they decide that they're going to have chapters that are both of them. There are 26 chapters in this book, and for the first 9, they are not doing that. Like, it's entirely separate, each chapter. Also, the chapters have different fonts based off of if Savannah or Cole is the person who is writing it. Chapter 4, we're back with Cole again. Yay! He goes on a long walk on the beach, that's not a joke, and he feels like he's extra close to God. Again, not a joke. I assumed what was going to happen is that something was going to happen, and it was going to be like, wow, a sign from God. That doesn't happen. I don't know why he felt like he needed to include this. Could have just said that he was on the beach and then he gets a text from Savannah. The font changes whenever there's a text, which is something that they have less of later on in the book. But here you can see that they change font for the text. Cole does a dramatic flashback to when he was growing up and starts talking about his mom. And he talks about how she wasn't just a Wookiee, she was a party Wookiee. And most Wookiees don't get hammered and dance to Despacito because they are incredibly intoxicated. Important clarification, the Despacito meme was partially dead at the time this book was published. One of the things I love about my mom is she's never fake. What you see is what you get with her. She hates drama and she had no use for fake Christianity, where people go to church on Sundays but don't live it through the week. Why am I saying this in the same voice that I read out Savannah's things? I don't know. I'm hopefully going to change that the next time I read out one of these things. After an incident where some creepy guy in town sexually harassed Cole, Cole's mom started to lose her faith, which is great. Not the sexually harassing children part, the losing faith part, and the fact that he got caught, which I didn't actually mention, however it says that in the script. I'd actually love to do an interview with Cole's mom where I talk about if she has a bunch of annoyances with the shit that he's saying now on his Twitter and sexually harassing 4-year-olds, which is incredibly hypocritical. He explains how waiting until marriage is super great because no one wants to hear what you did with your ex. Okay, don't tell them. No one wants to hear about the weird sex things you do in general, regardless of if you're still dating the person. He claims that Jesus said, if you look at a woman and lust within your heart, that's the same as sleeping with her. Every single person in the entire world has been horny at once in their life. That's not true. Asexual people exist. That's not the point. But the point is, this is an impossibly high standard. He talks about if he had thought about the logistics of dating Savannah, he wouldn't have. I kind of wish he had, because then I wouldn't be reading this book. Then we have a blank page, because the formatting of this book wants every single chapter to start on this page. I don't know why. Chapter 5 is from Savannah's perspective. She texts Cole and invites him to go out to eat food, as humans do. There's a straight up grammatical error. That's cool. And it's also a grammatical error that any reasonably intelligent second grader would be able to tell you is wrong. So remember that joke about how I'm not certain if they can read? This is the evidence. There's a one-word text. Sadly, no one texts K during this entire book. That would have made the formatting even more entertaining. They go to eat food at Wahoo's Fish Taco, which is a place that exists and has nothing to do with the sound from Mario. The four people that are there are Cole and Sav, obviously. They're the people in the title of the book. John Stephen, who is always referred to by his full name, and Savannah's sister, Chantal. Four of us sat down at a table and made awkward small talk until the waitress came to take our order. Yes, this is how you eat food as a human. Also, this is just how people eat food when they go eat food with two people they've met once. Wahoo's is known for its fish tacos. Yeah, that's in the name. To be honest, some of this reads like bad fan fiction. Wahoo's is known for its fish tacos. It has all kinds of stuff on the menu, but the four of us all ordered the exact same thing, chicken quesadillas. How much do you want to bet that when they ordered, Cole said quesadilla? I'll give Chantal and Savannah the benefit of the doubt because they're from California, but Cole probably said it wrong. John Stephen proposes that they try to make the biggest mess with their quesadillas as possible and try to get quesadilla shit all over their face because they want to have the weirdest quesadilla bite possible. I think it's a sex thing. Savannah is super proud of Cole and John Stephen because they don't say fuck, which is something that I don't know why Christians are so upset with. This standard is different for everyone. For example, I only get upset if you say moist. However, some Christians feel like you can't say OMG because that implies saying God, even though the word gosh exists, which is a word that I haven't said in my entire life up until 30 seconds ago. Then they go out and hang out on the beach and poke random people on the shoulder. I'm only including this detail because I know that my friends Julian and JP watch my videos and I want them to relive the same trauma I did. They go to a haunted building and John Stephen immediately opts to break in and some To Kill a Mockingbird shit. They start asking each other weird questions like, what's the worst thing you ever done? To which Savannah obviously responds with have premarital sex because Cole is weirdly looking at her finger to see if she has a ring and she is trying to let Cole know that she isn't married. After they go back, they talk about how Cole is really mature for his age, which is just factually untrue. If you are an adult who eats chicken quesadillas and walks around tapping random people on the shoulder in public to harass them, you are not. They're at a different place, and Savannah decides to swear off drinking until Cole's 21 because she wants to be closer to God. Remember, this is coming from a religion whose most important figure literally said, "This wine is my blood." Chapter 6. They go to VidCon, and unlike most YouTuber books, which just shoehorn in VidCon specifically so that it can be a book about being a YouTuber, actually that probably happens more often in YouTuber movies, this actually happened. I looked into it, and yeah, this happened. They went to Disneyland. Those are the only sources of places that I know that they went based off checking their social media. I can't check Cole's Twitter, again, because he deleted it after sexually harassing a 4-year-old. I need to stress how important this information is. They go around doing whatever it is people do at VidCon. On the second day, we came across a booth that was handing out free skateboards. Now, these weren't the greatest boards in the world, but they were still pretty sweet. Seems normal. Even Savannah got one. Welcome back to another segment of Internalized Misogyny. Why would a woman get a thing that normally men like? We all know that in order to use a skateboard, you need a penis. Also, calling it pretty sweet is weird. It sounds like a white dad trying to act cool. He was 21 when this book was written. I know that that's how white dads trying to act cool sound because those are things that my own white dad says. Anyway, they go FaceTime Cole's 6-year-old sister, which is weird. Again, he's 19. My little sister seems surprised to see a girl with me. Yeah, because you assume that this guy is gay. So they go to IHOP, which is specified for some reason. When I wrote books as a kid, I would always specify specific name brand locations, just like, oh, we're going to go to X restaurant, which sounds like product placement. In this case, it probably was product placement. When I did it, it felt like I was fleshing out the world, which is really weird because it also doesn't make any sense. I would include things in a fictional location that only existed in my city. Cole makes everyone go around the table asking about the relationship status to find out if Savannah is still with Tommy. John Stephen talks about all this shit about how God forgives all mistakes, which is in blatant contradiction with the Bible, where God just commits fucking genocide because he feels like it and because people are bad. That's some Hitler logic. Then Cole explains Savannah basically rehashing the entirety of the chapter about her past, except in one page, which really shows how overly long that chapter was when it didn't need to be. Then they go to a movie theater and watch a scary movie. I assume that the reason why they did this was because there was a study that showed that people who went to horror movies on dates tended to have more dates afterwards, because scary experiences cause bonding. But in reality, Cole did this because he's trying to hold Savannah's hand, which is an incredibly weird thing to be trying to do. Then they flirt with each other and we move to the final day of VidCon. Chapter 7. I didn't need to move this energetically. I don't know why I did that. So we're back with Savannah, and she explains that on the final day of VidCon, they go go-karting because they're 8-year-olds at heart. They drive to the friend's apartment where Cole is staying, and they drive alone. Ooh. The logic that sex will come out of this is made by the same people who decided that if teenage girls' bra straps are visible, that's going to lead to sex. And while they're in the car, they hold hands. Ooh. And while they're watching a movie, they snuggle. Ooh. Not in the way that snuggling is generally perceived to be on the internet, which is code for sex. No, this is actual snuggling, because we don't have that shit in our Christian household. Then they kiss. Well, Cole said, I'm not going to date anyone or talk to any other girls if you promise not to date any other guys. I promise I won't either, I said. So first off, this implies that Savannah can date other girls, which is obviously makes sense based off of Cole's record of heteronormativity. Also, Cole's side of the contract specifically says he can't talk to any other girls. I like to think that he is back home and he goes to a restaurant and the waitress comes and asks him what he wants to order and he just stands there like and doesn't say anything. I went downstairs and talked to my mom and told her everything that happened. I explained to her all of the reasons I liked Cole and how he loved the Lord so much and how I could see him completely changing my life. Forget all of the non-God related reasons to compliment Cole, which I'm aware don't exist, but I'm sure she thinks they exist. Let's talk about how much he loves the Lord. Chapter 8, back in Bama. Obviously, Bama is short for Obama. So we start with Cole explaining how he can't call Savannah his girlfriend because if she was really his girlfriend, then there would be no reason to call him that because God would work it out. Great logic. As opposed to actually trying to make your relationship work, have factors that are completely out of your control and no one can prove exist. Have those be in control. Later, my mom pulled me aside. She said, Cole, just because Savannah has a daughter and just because she made a mistake in the past, don't let that keep you from pursuing her. If she's not religious anymore, why would she consider that a mistake? He tells everyone in his life that he has a girlfriend, which he specifically said he wasn't going to do. Obviously, no one believes him because of the girlfriend that goes to a different school principal. So he has to provide evidence. So he shows photos, which, big invasion of privacy. Savannah is supposedly being harassed by Tommy trying to get her back, but I seriously doubt that, based off of what we've learned about him actually. Cut to South Carolina on the 4th of July. Cole has 40 of his relatives at the same event, which, holy shit, I could probably name 40 relatives on both sides of my family. This is what happens when you don't use birth control. So he tells them all about Savannah. Again, a big invasion of privacy. Then he tells them all that she has a kid. I'm pretty sure that one of his family members literally says, hold on there, partner. So Cole is going to a Christian conference called Motion. It's always in all caps. I presume it's supposed to be a reference to how in most translations of the Bible, the Lord is always in all caps. Cole decides to invite Savannah to this event. Since her faith was still new to her, I thought Motion could really help her get off to a good start. It had for me. She loved the idea. No, it fucking isn't. She grew up Christian. Her faith is not new to her. Also, what makes Cole think that her foray into the world of premarital sex makes it so that she wasn't Christian during that time? Because we all know that the Bible explicitly says that you can't have sex with someone unless you're married to them. Or if they're your sex slave, obviously. Oh no, wait, if she's your sex slave. Because only women can be sex slaves. Men have to be physical labor slaves. You see, Cole, we do not want to play the just because it's in the Bible, we have to do it game. Savannah is going up to San Francisco to meet with her sister, so Cole decides to fly into LA and then drive up to San Francisco with Savannah. This conversation happens on the 4th of July. Cole mentions that this is going to happen on July 10th. A flight from Mobile, the most likely airport in Alabama, all the way to LA. costs $400 one way with 6 days ahead of time. And also this flight is on a Sunday. I did the math when I looked into this. This was on a Tuesday, which, life hack, is the cheapest day to fly on. Great use of money for people that don't have jobs. Savannah acknowledges that it's weird that she's going on a trip for 7 hours with someone that she barely knows. She says, "I don't want you to think that I saw the weekend as a test for Cole." And then she explains why she's doing exactly this. They drive up to San Francisco. I expected this to take up a lot more of the chapter than it really did. When you write an autobiography, you obviously can't remember exactly what people said. Obviously, this is bound to happen. You don't have detailed dialogue for the places where character development happens as a real person, then it makes your story be bad, which is why writing autobiographies generally doesn't create super narrative stories for regular people. They go eat dinner with Savannah's dad. It's literally summarized as, "We had a really good time with him." I think that Cole is an okay writer. I would say he's even slightly below average, but Savannah just glosses over incredibly important conversations. I guess it's sort of like a summarized maybe if you cut out all the jokes. Or maybe there are jokes. They're just Wookham jokes that I don't get because I'm not. They dilly-dally about whether or not Cole is actually going to ask Savannah to be his girlfriend, which, considering that he already considers her as such, I feel like we passed that point, probably like at VidCon. Cole ends up asking her at almost exactly midnight. Cole's flight is at 10 a.m. So they have to drive all the way back from San Francisco to LA in 10 hours. Actually, they need to drive there in a lot less time because they need to arrive at the airport a couple hours before their flight. Maybe don't plan your flight to be in the morning when you have to drive 7 hours immediately before it. Instead, they decide to dilly-dally when they need to leave to drive down to the airport at 2 a.m. Chapter 10. So, we finally get Cole and Savannah's perspectives in the same chapter. Savannah is worried about what Cole's friends will think of her because of the whole premarital sex thing, which is a valid concern considering how shitty Cole's friends are. The fact we were together was such a God thing that attending a conference designed to draw us closer to him seemed perfect. What does that mean? Does it mean like a good thing? Is it a typo? Is it like oh, that's such a Steve thing. Nice job, Steve. But like, God? It could be either, and I really do not give a shit. Cole explains how important God should be in their relationship, because the most important person in your relationship shouldn't be anyone you've ever actually met. Motion is essentially just a bunch of Christians crammed into a basketball stadium while they play Christian music. It's essentially a suburban high school basketball game. At the conference, they split everyone into groups of men and women. I would sing the internalized misogyny jingle, but this is pretty blatant. Savannah basically explains her backstory again for the third time, but this time to some random Christian girls that she got paired up with. It turns out it's true. Confession is good for the soul. At least when you're with people who really love Jesus. I'm going to say that confession is good for the soul when the person you're talking to is one of these things called a therapist, who, fun fact, usually don't talk about Jesus unless you specifically ask them to. Cole seems like he's weirdly into the way that Savannah is praying. Like, nothing turns me on more than the way that women pray to God. Actually, that would make a lot of sense, because religion is subservience to someone who is a shitty person. And Savannah explains how weirdly into waiting until marriage Cole is. I surrendered all those things I did before. Sex, drinking, partying, things that separated me from God. I gave them all to God because I wanted to live like Jesus. You know those 3 things that Jesus definitely did? Partying, check. He definitely did that. 1 out of 3 parties I've been to have people flipping over the table because they don't want to pay taxes. Drinking, his most famous line is, "This wine is my blood." And sex, his girlfriend was literally a prostitute. That's actually not confirmed. It was potentially a mistranslation and they were just calling her a hoe, but that's not the point. Chapter 11, social media. The chapter begins with Cole explaining how social media is fake and also random people on the internet have very low accountability because they can just talk shit about you, which is exactly what I'm doing right here. He's posting photos of himself with Savannah and everyone assumes that they're together. And he is somehow offended by this. First off, they're right. Second off, have they ever met a human person ever? This shit happens all the time. Why would a man and a woman hang out if they didn't want to bang? So Cole decides to post that they're together in the caption of an Instagram photo. Pop quiz time. Have you ever read the caption of an Instagram photo? He talks about how Savannah is his girlfriend and how God is perfect and can control everything. Cole goes on a mission to Bolivia for reasons that I'm still unsure of, after which Savannah comes to Alabama to meet Cole's family for his 20th birthday, which sounds very wrong. In fact, they get married within a year. Savannah explains how her mom meeting Cole was less of a big thing because they weren't together, and now that they are together, it's more of a big thing. Savannah feels threatened by Cole's dad because he's the strongest Christian guy ever, just from what Cole had told me about him. I don't know what this means. Physically, theologically, she compares him to the people who say weird things on their Instagram comments, which is, again, weird. Why do you bring them into this? With 4 brothers and only 1 sister, Cole had a more male-oriented family dynamic than I had. Lily, his 6-year-old sister, and Cole's mom were definitely outnumbered. Cole had told me to prepare myself for a house full of farting and burping. First off, general toxic masculinity, because we all know women don't fart or burp. Also, male-oriented family dynamic is not great, sounds very creepy. So Cole suggests the idea of posting vlogs on YouTube, talking about their godly relationship to try to get accountability if they ever try to have sex before marriage. Because we all know that if there's anything YouTubers are known for, it's accountability. Also, again, even if you have premarital sex, it would be so easy to lie. Do you know how easy it is to lie on the internet? No one is filming you have sex. Or at least I hope they aren't. No one is making you talk about your sex lives. Please don't, actually. Then we have literally my favorite line in this entire book. No matter how strong our commitments might be, our flesh is weak. Chapter 12 begins with Savannah explaining how funny Cole's family is. I assume that they're funny in the way that isn't. That probably didn't make any sense. I mean funny in the same way as boomer comics that are basically saying wife bad. I could see Everly and Cole's little sister becoming great friends. Okay, let's think about that. Cole's sister. Everly is Cole's stepdaughter. That would be becoming great friends with your step-aunt. This is why you have your kids not be this far apart in age. So Cole is going to fly out to LA for Labor Day weekend, so Savannah sits Everly down and explains what's going to happen between them, which again is not banging. We cannot stress this enough. They do not bang. Then we have a very creepy quote from Cole. I flew out Labor Day weekend to see Savannah, but I was really going out there to hang with Everly. Which, as I mentioned, this sentence is very creepy. But it gets creepier when you think about Cole's Twitter remarks. So, obviously, he goes to some trusted peer-reviewed studies and some sources from trusted therapists online to figure out how to be a good father to Everly. No, just kidding. He goes to some religious authorities and asks them what it means to be a father according to the Bible. He talks about how this date is different than usual dates because Everly is there. Now I wasn't just dating a girl. I was also dating her daughter. You can throw that on the pile of things in this book to never say ever. Essentially what he's trying to do is he's trying to make vlogs with Everly to try to get her support with his relationship with Savannah, which is great. And it would be much better if Cole knew how to word it well. So they make videos with Everly and they blow the fuck up because cute kid. And also, obviously they're YouTubers now. They need to find success somehow. But then Cole attributes it to God, who's giving him a platform so that he can preach. We don't just want to show people our family. We want them to see Jesus in our family. And in is italicized for some reason. We don't just want you to see what our family is. We also want you to know that Jesus is in the other room fucking my wife. Obviously, 13 is unlucky, so we're going to skip chapter 13 and move on to chapter 14, which totally isn't chapter 13, but with a sticker put over 3 so that it says 14. So Cole has to go back to college after Labor Day so he can get his business degree. Fucking pleb. He mentions that he wants to go into a sales career, which is just kind of sad, but he's a shitty person, so I don't really care. He explains how in the morning he'll wake up at 8 a.m. and then send a text to Savannah. She lives in California. Alabama is 2 hours ahead of that. You do the math and think about how weird that is. He does it despite this. Obviously, what's considered weird in this book, the threshold has been raised significantly higher. He explains how he uses any and all free time he has to talk to Savannah instead of, studying. I don't really understand how long-distance relationships work, but I'm sure that they generally go over much better when you're specifically trying to not have sex. He explains how he didn't really care about college, which I can already tell because he's a business major, and how his major is really Savannah, which is unbelievably weird. But again, it's believably weird for Cole. Sex before marriage short-circuits the process of becoming one. Everything becomes about the physical, and you can never really build a relationship that can survive anything. That's really cool. It's also not true. It's true about waiting until marriage, which is the most ironic thing in this entire book. It's weird that he has a semi-scientific explanation as to why he needs to not have sex before marriage, as opposed to just a 4,000-year-old book says so. I'm not saying that his marriage has failed because he waited until marriage. They have had another kid. Savannah is pregnant. She might have delivered by the time that this video goes up. I don't know. He explains how their long-distance relationship makes every time they meet more special, so they will change the date at which they're going to meet, which seems like a waste of money. Because of the whole YouTube thing and the fact that he doesn't really need to go to college anymore, he decides he's going to move to California because Savannah lives there and they can make more videos if they live together. He decides he's going to move in May. Then it hit me. I still had to wait 7 or 8 more months before I could see Savannah every day. So now we understand why Cole finds it so mesmerizing that you can measure the amount of distance between 2 locations in a car by time, because he doesn't understand how time works. That also probably explains why he always moves up the times that he's supposed to see Savannah, because he's just like, oh, holy shit, it's 3 more days? What if it was 8 hours? Actually, chapter 14 now. So, post-motion, Cole gives Savannah a Bible, and it's supposedly annotated with Post-it notes, but by Post-it notes, I assume that he means these things. The gift gets her really interested in the Bible. Even though I'd grown up in the church, I never really read the Bible that much. Now I couldn't get enough of it. Yeah, I'm gonna assume that the reason why you didn't read the Bible is because the Bible has some fucking traumatic shit in it. Welcome to the first and only ever Bible reading on this channel. As you can see, I also have a Bible that's annotated. It has exactly 1 annotation, and it's so that I could film this segment where I needed to point out the part that I'm talking about. About that time, her husband woke up and got ready to leave. He opened the door and went outside, where he found his wife laying at the door with her hands on the doorstep. Get up, he said, it's time to leave. But his wife didn't move. He lifted her body onto his donkey and left. When he got home, he took a butcher knife and cut her body into 12 pieces. Then he told some messengers, take 1 piece to each tribe of Israel and ask everyone if anything like this has ever happened since Israel left Egypt. Tell them to think about it, talk it over, and tell us what should be done. Everyone who saw a piece of the body said, this is horrible. Nothing like this has ever happened since the day Israel left Egypt. I don't know why I did that, but I did it. It goes to show that the Bible is very fucked up and how getting this Bible really began her indoctrination. I don't know how much indoctrination there was. She was growing up. I had been a Christian a lot longer than Saf. That's a lie. She's older. She also grew up Christian. And I was pretty familiar with the Bible, but wow, some of her questions really challenged me. And it wasn't just the questions. God used her excitement about him to convict me because I sometimes took my relationship with him for granted. Essentially, she asks questions about the Bible and why does Cole really believe in God. And as opposed to coming to the true conclusion that it was because his parents were Christian when he was growing up, he decides, and doesn't actually say anything in the book. At Motion, there was an exercise where they were supposed to write down something on a piece of paper and then crumple it up and throw it away to give it completely to God. God is the name of the janitor at the basketball stadium Motion was held at. Savannah has some secret that she's keeping from Cole. It's gonna seem like a big bombshell based off the way that they hype it up, but it really does not fucking matter. Cole is on the set of filming a pilot for a reality show that the Disney Channel was gonna make about Cole's family. Sadly, it got dropped. I really, really wish that actually happened because I really want to make a video about it, but I guess I'm gonna have to make a video about the essentially similar reality show premise that Hulu is trying to push on me. Cole is on the phone with Savannah and she lets slip that she has a big juicy secret. All that the secret is that she slept with another dude. Not while she was dating Cole, mind you. This was over a year before, and Cole acts like it's a huge thing. Like, I guess Cole actually cares because he's weird that way, I don't know. He already knew that she had already had sex. So why does it matter? And also, by Cole's own admission, no one wants to hear about what they did with their ex. So why would Savannah say this if this sexual encounter does not actually matter? He gets on a flight and immediately flies out to LA, which is very weird. He talks about how she wasn't really Christian then, which doesn't really make that much sense. Just because you ignore 0.1% of the Bible doesn't mean you're not Christian. I would bet you $57. No. 57 cents that you could not find an actual Christian who believes unironically that we should have slavery because the Bible says so. After Savannah finds out that Cole is going to fly to California to, I don't know, do what? I said, don't do that. We'll figure it out. But Cole didn't want to figure it out. He wanted to work it out. There's a big difference. There isn't. If you type workout into thesaurus.com, figure out is one of the things that shows up. For some reason, exercise isn't. I don't know why that is. They act like it's a big thing and they might break up over it, which it very well may have been, but also, why would it have been like that? Savannah decides that Cole is the man that she prayed for because the man that she prayed for would have forgiven her for that. I don't know why. It's not like someone would be super offended by that. To be honest, if you said that, like, at the beginning, then he probably would have been fine with it. It was probably because you were keeping it from him, which is dumb because, again, he doesn't want to hear about what people do with their exes. She has a kid, so it's not like she could lie about the premarital sex thing like she could if she didn't. Chapter 15. So, cut back to Cole and Savannah discussing whether or not they should move to California. This book does a weird thing where the two authors' perspectives are, like, on the same event, are wildly apart from each other. I don't know why that is. I assume it's just a weird pacing issue. It's Halloween and Savannah and Everly are flying to Alabama. Savannah is afraid of what Cole's family will think of Everly. That's the end of this story. It's just like, oh, we're gonna go there for Halloween. Okay, now I'm afraid of what Cole's family will think of Everly. Okay, so now it's Thanksgiving now, and we're going back down there. Cole's dad rents a 15-seater van to drive 8 hours from where they live in Alabama to Panama City, Florida, where Cole's grandparents live. Of course, Savannah doesn't explain anything about what happens at Thanksgiving either. And in the end, what ends up happening is that Cole decides to live in Savannah's mom's house. She talks about how great this is because they're planning to not have sex before marriage, and obviously, if your mom's around, you're not going to want to have sex. Christian life hack. Live in your mom's house so that it's much easier to not have sex before marriage. Actually, Cole's from Alabama, so it's probably a good thing they're doing this at Savannah's house. Chapter 15+1. Cole talks about some cryptic shit about moving to California. It was at this point that I found this book very boring. The beginning of this book is a romance, and it's much easier to make that be entertaining. Obviously, it isn't good, but it's entertaining ironically. This part of the book is the boring bad. They spend like 4 or 5 chapters deliberating on whether or not they want to move to California, which is dumb. Sure, this may have been how it actually went down, but I do not fucking care if this is how it actually went down. Make your book interesting. Oh, and also don't say that you're dating your stepdaughter in your book. That's another general life hack of how to make your autobiography be good. So Cole is visiting Savannah and Everly for her 4th birthday. Everly's 4th birthday, I hope you know that. I probably didn't need to say it. Nothing really happens at Everly's party, partially because of how this book is written, and partially because it's really weird to have a detailed account of someone else's 4th birthday party. It's Christmas, and Cole invites Savannah on a cruise to the Bahamas. That didn't age well. Savannah needs to get her mom to babysit Everly so that she can come. Asking her to keep her granddaughter is like asking Cole if he wants waffles and bacon in the morning. The answer is always yes. Welcome to this Christmas edition of Internalized Misogyny. The woman must make food, and the man must want food. That one's probably a stretch, I don't know. So everyone assumes that they're going to get married, and Savannah is just like, oh, I really wonder when it's going to happen. The answer is chapter 20. Obviously, while they're on this boat, nothing happens in detail because this book doesn't have good pacing. One of the things I love about Savannah is she's this tiny girly girl, but she's not afraid to be herself around me. Okay? Maybe kind of a weird fetish thing, but okay. I don't really care. And this girl can eat. Nope, now it's sexist. Women can eat food, but they have to still be the right size for her husband to find her hot. Chapter 17 is called Preparing for the Move. Notice how this doesn't happen in this chapter. Its title is actually very similar to chapter 15's, which was Pondering the Move, because this part of the book is 95% about considering moving to California. For the first time in this entire book, Cole has the idea to do self-reflection, and he basically explains that he's gonna propose to Savannah. He tells his parents that he's gonna marry her, okay, whatever. He says that he wasn't asking for their blessing. He knew that they were gonna say yes anyway, but it was sort of a thing. So obviously he decides not to ask Savannah's dad. Oh no, wait, he does. Sounds like a double standard and or internalized misogyny. Cole and his mom go ring shopping, and because Cole's sister is only 6, he explains that his mom's life has all been basically toxic masculinity. So they're all about how like, oh, he finally gets to do a thing for a girl or whatever. I've never gone shopping for a diamond ring before. Yeah, I figured that was kind of implied. He has these specific specifications because he's trying to get a ring that looks similar to one of Savannah's friends' rings. And then when he goes ring shopping, he immediately throws that out the window and buys the first ring he sees. He asks Savannah's mom and sister about the ring and be like, hey, is she gonna like that? Probably shouldn't be marrying your girlfriend if you don't know enough about what she likes to judge for yourself what kind of ring she would like. He decides that he's gonna tell Everly that he's gonna marry her mom, which is a pretty reasonable thing, I would say. Partially because this is gonna significantly change her life. You need to like tell her that this is gonna happen beforehand, and partially because he's also dating her. So if he doesn't tell her, it's wife kidnapping. Chapter the 18th, which fits a lot with this arc because the third Shrek movie is called Shrek the Third. So, New Year's of 2017, they're at a God-themed conference in Atlanta. Savannah talks about how everything in this book seems like a bunch of coincidences, and it is. Cole explains all the things that he wanted from a wife when he was growing up. Many of them fit with Savannah, however, obviously the having a kid part is different. He talks about how he saved Savannah from not being into God. Okay, Cole, you didn't. You fucking didn't. She grew up Christian. She was praying at the start of the book, and also implying that there's anything good out of being religious, being like, oh, it's a better thing. Like, I saved her from this supposedly bad thing. It's a fucking savior complex. You did not save her from anything, and you did not change her religion. He talks about his close relationship with his parents, because honor thy father and mother, and then everyone goes to the airport so that Cole can fly to California. It's very emotional. Just kidding. Cole isn't good enough of a writer to convey emotion. So then Cole moves into Savannah's mom's house, which is kind of weird and also reminds me of the wife's boyfriend meme. Chapter -19. So the chapter starts with them explaining the differences between having a long-distance relationship and living together. I don't think I learned anything from the beginning of this chapter. They do this so many fucking times. They explain the same shit over and over again so that their book can be longer. He shit talks people from California for being way too into their parents, because he would just put on a t-shirt and shorts and a shitty hat, and that would be fine. Cole, just because you have no fashion sense doesn't mean that you have to shit talk everyone else and call them a narcissist because they do. Which is kind of hypocritical considering that I'm wearing this, but I was wearing a jacket at the start of this video, and I took it off because it's August. So we cut back to the fall when Cole meets Tommy for the first time, because this book is transcribed from a conversation between Cole and Savannah, and all of the tangents were left in. He goes on about how because it's Everly's dad, it's different than all of Savannah's other exes, which is kind of obvious. He talks about how because love thy neighbor, he shouldn't be hostile towards Tommy, which, no, that's not what he does at all. Exhibit A against this. The way that Cole has shit-talked Tommy throughout this entire book. Exhibit B against this. Cole's Twitter. Love thy fucking neighbor. He explains how grateful he is that Everly likes him more than his biological father, and how it's okay for her to have 2 dads, but not in a gay way, because remember, Cole doesn't like that. Savannah starts bitching about the fact that because she's making money from YouTube now, her mom makes her pay rent. And then she turns around completely and flexes on her mother about having more money because she makes money on YouTube now. Chapter 20 is called The Proposal. Guess what happens in it? So Savannah explains how she expected Cole to propose at that God-themed convention in Atlanta. He keeps bringing it up and then not proposing, which reminds me of the episode of The Office where Jim kept fucking with Pam by doing things that were sort of like proposing and then faking her out. Cole decides that he wants all of his family to be there when he proposes because I don't know, I guess he just wanted to waste money on plane tickets. He picks a day based off of when everyone is available, and then he comes up with a genius plan. He sends a fake email from the hotel to himself so that it seems like he wants to try to get them to... Not that. He sends a fake email from the hotel where all of his family is staying to himself so that he can make it seem like they're trying to do a sponsored video or something and they want to do a vlog there. He's doing this for two reasons. A, so that Savannah doesn't question why they're wearing something nice, and B, so that he can film it without it being weird, because you gotta be on that grind. He also explains that the fake out proposals were so that she wouldn't get suspicious whenever they went anywhere nice, which would include this. Cole tells Everly that he wants to marry Savannah and how she's gonna have two dads, which is fine so long as it's not gay, again emphasizing this tweet. Savannah is immediately suspicious of Cole because he sends Everly off to her grandma's house so that she can't accidentally spill the beans on this entire plan. She sees right through his brilliant plan and decides to just go along with it anyway. She catches a message on Cole's computer from one of her friends, but again, decides to just go along with it. It's raining, and obviously that means that it doesn't go great, but it stops before he's supposed to propose, so he doesn't give a shit. Cole decides he's going to go to the gym so that he has an excuse to hang out with his family. Cole plays dumb at all the shit that he set up for this proposal, but because he's a bad actor, Savannah immediately sees right through it, and then he proposes, and it's very emotional. Just kidding, Savannah isn't good enough of a writer to convey emotion. He told me he'd wanted to marry me from the day he met me. Considering what we know Cole thinks of divorce, again, emphasizing this tweet, I'm gonna dispute that because he thought that she was married when they first met. Humpdor 21. So Savannah explains how she wants the wedding to be less extravagant, not because people literally take out loans to pay for their exuberantly overpriced weddings, but because she's forgetting what weddings are really about, which is a piece of paper from the government that lets you pay taxes together. Oh no, wait, it's God. So Savannah explains how she wants her marriage to last, which, no shit. Also, Cole hates divorce, as we learned from that awful tweet. So I don't think that you have anything to worry about. She mentions how she's already had a divorce, which is just incorrect. Now cut to Cole talking about his perfect wedding. He doesn't really care what happens, but he really wants a barn for some reason. They join a Christian, help group or something for engaged and newly wedded couples. I don't know what that entails, and the book doesn't fucking tell me. Savannah explains how after she met Cole, she got more indoctrinated into the Bible. In the weeks leading up to our wedding, I got super into reading scripture. That's not something we put in our videos. Yes, it is. You won't find Cole and Sav Read the Bible Today on our YouTube channel. In this book, they talk about how they have videos talking about how they're saving sex until marriage because God, which I guess is not technically just straight up reading the Bible, but it's close enough to it that this is at the very least misleading. At the end of the chapter, Savannah explains all the different places you can live and explains that apartments, condos, and houses exist. By the way, the plural of house should be heis. That's not the point though. And then they buy a house. It was at this point that I realized that most of the chapters have the subject of their chapter, like the title, is mentioned for like 30 seconds at the start of the chapter, and then they go and completely shift gears and they're just like, oh, we're talking about Jesus now. I was not prepared for the one chapter that bucks this trend to be chapter 22. Purity. Shit has come into contact with a fan. So Cole explains how living with Savannah's mom makes it significantly less likely that they'll bang, which I actually agree with. Except for the fact that having sex with your girlfriend is bad. I do agree that if you live with your girlfriend's mom, you're probably going to be less likely to have sex. Then he reads out some scripture from 1 Corinthians. I really do not give a shit. The thing that's funny is that he writes out first, like, the word, specifically to prevent people from saying 2 Corinthians. Obviously, the point where he reads scripture is the part where it gets Jesus-y. And it's not like God is against sex. He created it as a gift to be enjoyed in marriage. 1 Corinthians 7, 1 through 5, I don't know how you're supposed to format Bible verses when you read them out, basically tells married couples to have a lot of sex. One book of the Bible, Song of Solomon, is essentially a big celebration of sex and marriage. First off, even assuming that God exists, the reason why he would have created sex would be to incentivize people to have kids. And second, I'm not even sure if the couple in Song of Solomon are married. I'm pretty sure that they're not. He then calls sex an awesome gift. Life hack for if you're trying to save sex until marriage. If you call sex an awesome gift, people won't want to have it with you. Then Savannah essentially rehashes the same shit that Cole said at the start of the chapter. So how do you keep it a commitment to purity? I like to use a Brita filter. When your boyfriend lives in the same house as you. First, we worked really hard to put Jesus first in everything. That sounds like a sex thing. She explains how Cole won't want to have sex with her if she sleeps in the same bed as her 4-year-old daughter, which I guess makes sense, but also Cole's dating Everly too. She explains how not having sex before marriage will set a good example for Everly. Good idea to teach your kid to not do the thing that they literally wouldn't exist without. She mentions again that having a big following on YouTube probably helped them not bang, which I'm going to disagree with, considering how easy it is to lie on the internet. If you wanted to say that you didn't bang when you really did, it wouldn't have been that difficult. They explain how if they said they were going to do something and then they didn't, then they would lose a big following. There's anything that YouTubers are known for, it's for losing subscribers when they do something shitty. Onision is a literal fucking pedophile and he still has 1.5 million subscribers. Then Cole addresses something that I've basically been saying since the start of this video, which is that his motivations for marriage are tainted by the fact that he wants to have sex. I don't think that's really a bad thing. Marriage is fucking stupid, but considering that he hates divorce, it's probably significantly worse of an idea for him to do that with that motivation than it is for anyone else. Well, sex is an important part of a healthy marriage. It's not the most important part. Yeah, the same thing is true of any relationship. You think that it changes because you have a magical piece of paper from the government that lets you pay taxes together, or a magical piece of paper that is signed by someone who claims to speak for someone who no one has any evidence of actually existing. And because he uses these pseudoscientific arguments to be like, oh, having sex before marriage changes whatever, as opposed to just saying, having sex before marriage is something that the Bible tells you shouldn't do. He acts like this piece of paper psychologically changes you when it's a piece of paper. Why did this chapter have to be the one that was actually all about the subject of the chapter? Chapter 23 begins with Cole being pleasantly surprised that Everly accepted him as her father, which I don't know why he'd doubt. He seems like a pretty nice guy so long as you're a cis-het white Christian, and her biological parents are separated, seems pretty emotionally available. And also, you demonize her biological father, so it probably makes it pretty easy for him to convince her that he's better than Tommy. So the fam, that's not a joke, that's what their channel is called, decides that they're going to vlog a pool party where Everly invites her fellow 4-year-old friends over to swim. Knowing Cole's track record, this probably isn't going to turn out great. Then Everly decides she's going to save this by deciding to make a vlog herself. She talks about her parents and how much she loves them. You know, the kind of stupid shit that 4-year-olds would do if they ran a YouTube channel. Oh my god, Watch Mojo but ran by 4-year-olds. Or like BuzzFeed ran by 4-year-olds. That's a joke idea, or video idea. In this vlog, she mentions how Cole is her daddy, which, considering the comments about him also dating her, doesn't come off super great. And Cole is so moved by his stepdaughter saying shit he already knew that he can't finish editing. It's very emotional. Just kidding, Cole isn't good enough of a writer to convey emotion. Chapter 24. We're back to talking about the wedding. Savannah is talking about how she's trying to have the wedding as soon as possible. She doesn't really care about how her wedding is, and for a long time she didn't even want to get married. This is framed as heresy, but I really do not care. However, now that Cole is withholding sex unless they get married, now she actually does want to get married. She talks about how stressful wedding planning is, which, no shit. When she's out dress shopping, she is just like, okay, here's the kind of dress that I want. And then she immediately cuts it and buys the first one she sees. Exactly the same thing as Cole going ring shopping. Then she has to go out and buy bridesmaid dresses for all 10 of her bridesmaids, which seems a bit excessive, and it is. But then she roasts Cole for not having 10 friends to be his groomsmen. First off, why'd you have to do him dirty like that? I mean, Cole's an asshole. He deserves it. And second, he has 4 brothers, so it's probably not as hard as it really seems. Cole says that buying all this shit sucks because California is expensive, but then he finds one venue. It's out in the middle of the desert, and it has a barn, which is the one thing that they wanted for some reason, and it's within their price range, which has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that it's in the middle of the desert and their wedding is in July. Then for some reason he starts talking about their channel. He explains what clickbait is, because again, the Wookums don't know what it means, and then starts flexing about the amount of views that his videos are getting. The water park video has around 10 million more views than even our wedding video, and our wedding video has a lot of views. Earlier on, I read a quote from a part where Savannah compares something to Cole's desire for waffles and bacon in the morning, which is a fine analogy if you're talking to someone who also knows him. If it's not an established character trait, then that isn't going to make sense. And under almost no circumstances is someone going to remember exactly how many views their wedding video has. So comparing something to that is dumb. Chap Chop 25. So the Chap Chop begins with Cole explaining what marriage means for about the 10th time. Obviously, marriage is about God, because what isn't in this book? So their wedding, which they said was going to be small, is needlessly complicated. 10 bridesmaids, 10 groomsmen, 2 ring bearers, 5 flower girls. I'm not a wedding planner, I don't have experience in this field, but I'm pretty sure that you're only supposed to have one each of those last 2. And for your entertainment, I'm going to be reading out the names of these now about 7-year-old white children in Southern California. Ev and her bestie Ava, along with a little cousin named Layla, who pulled a wagon with baby twins Tatum and Oakley, yes, like the sunglasses, who are our close friends Madison and Kyler's children. You know, like Tyler, but with a K? I assume that's exactly how he explains his name to the barista at Starbucks. All of Cole's family comes to his wedding, which for some reason to Savannah is surprising. Savannah has a reunion with her father. It's very emotional. Just kidding, Savannah isn't good enough of a writer to convey emotion. Surprise, surprise, it's very hot in the desert in July. Cole gets this mantra from his uncle, I believe, about how it doesn't really matter that it's super hot out because he's going to get married and it's going to be so great, supposedly, that it's going to counteract the fact that people could literally die of heat stroke because everyone's wearing tuxedos. Savannah writes down her wedding vows using the Notes app on her iPhone, not a joke, and reads them out to her sister, who's done jack shit in the story for almost a year. Quiz time. On their wedding day, will they A, endure the heat because their marriage is so great, or B, have an unusually cool day and attribute it to God because everything in this book is attributed to God? Chapter 26 of 26. So, obviously, they're both nervous because it's their wedding day. Cole's dad decides to make French toast because it's supposedly something that he's well known for among his family, but he doesn't have a skillet, so he has to use pots and pans. A skillet is literally a frying pan. But this minor semantic distinction becomes a huge deal and they almost start a fire in the kitchen. Savannah has a friend hand deliver a letter to Cole, who in exchange gives her and Everly booklets. Savannah's is called 10 Things I Love About You, and holy shit, you do not understand how much I would love to do a Watch Mojo parody of this. Sadly, the book only counts up to number 4, and I don't know what the other 6 are, so I could not actually do that, but I really wanted to. Everly's is about becoming her daddy or something, who gives a shit. He also gives Everly a doll that she wanted. At this point, I found a hold slip for someone, I kid you fucking not, named Karen. So not only is she named Karen, she also owes $2 to the library. And presuming that the hold slip is what she used as a bookmark, which I'm gonna assume that's a thing that she did because that's something that I do whenever I get books from the library, and that's what I did here. She only made it to page 193. There are 199 pages in the story section of this book. We'll get back to that. The thing that's so great about this is that Karen got this close to finishing this awful book and just couldn't do it. So they go outside to get married and all the cliche wedding things happen. I'm gonna read some of these wedding vows to you because they look like they're ripped from r/Are the Straights Okay? This one's Savannah's. I promise to always make sure there's Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Maple Brown Sugar Mini Wheats in the pantry. And one of Cole's is, I promise to always be your best friend and laugh at your jokes even if they aren't funny. Obviously, because of how this book is, their wedding vows reference God and Jesus and the Bible and whatever other bullshit. They're married by a pastor, and then after their wedding, they bang and Cole tweets about it. And that's the end of the book. At the end of the last chapter, when I had you do this quiz, if you guessed C, never address the he, and make us clearly wonder what's going to happen, even though what happens sort of implies B, but who really gives a shit, you're correct. You also are either rewatching this video or have already read this book. And considering that the only 2 people in the entire world that have read this book are me and Karen, I find the first option much more likely. After the end of this book, there's a reflection guide, which sort of sounds like a, oh, you weren't fucking smart enough to figure out the themes of this book? Okay, let me spell them out for you. But instead, I'm going to read out the way that they describe their reflection guide. Now that you've finished reading the book, take a little time to reflect on some of the key themes, there weren't any, that played a major role in Cole and Sav's story. Read through the material for each day. Take a breath. Think deeply. Pray. And essentially, this is just a 14-day program all about prayer and shit. And I can't actually complete it because I have to take this book back to the library before those 14 days will be up, which is a great thing for me because it means I don't have to do this. If you do want me to make that video at some point in the future, too bad, because I hated this. I'm done with these two. I do want to say this though. What I'm saying here isn't Cole and Sav bad. I feel that Cole's Twitter makes that very apparent. The purpose of this video is to A, say that this book is bad, B, say this book doesn't need to exist because no one should ever need to read it, C, say that these two are not qualified to write a book, and D, say that some of the things that are in this book are very shitty. I don't just think this book is bad, it worries me. Luckily, however, none of their audience would actually read this book, so I don't even know who the target demographic is going to be for it. I assume that the audience is Wookums, but I read this. Maybe the audience is for people to read it ironically. Maybe the audience is specifically me, and also Karen.